I was about 6, they were giving a series of tests in the schools in the Newark area, New Jersey area. And I hadn't told my parents anything about it. I just went and took the test. And so they got a phone call saying I had won a scholarship for piano study on the basis of innate musical ability. I don't have any idea what those tests were. I don't really remember much about it. In the middle 70s, I decided to harken back to the kind of thing I did when I was a kid, to take a fairy tale and set it to music, giving it my own viewpoint. So that's how I landed on Beauty and the Beast. The fairy tale itself, I felt strongly about it. So I had more or less, I guess, 3/4 of the way written that opera when a good friend of mine who was working a lot in theater, low community theater, suggested that we try, just a group of friends, try putting the opera on. Technology today. Why not work for the listener, the text, and the music? In other words, to create using the written word, using the sung or spoken word, but no stage, nothing, using the mind of the listener and the reaction to the music, just the way in which I was listening, and to take it from there. It doesn't seem like an original idea, and yet I don't know of that idea being explored by anyone else.
A very brief glimpse into the development of the career of musician, composer, and humanitarian Frank DiGiacomo. But this is a story about more than music. It's about love. It's about friends and family, and about commitment that helped shape the life and musical passages in the works of Frank DiGiacomo. A native of New Jersey, he's now Central New York's living musical treasure, whose works encompass incidental music for stage plays, dramatic oratorios, religious music, song cycles, complete operas, and his new, most exciting contemporary music. Although DiGiacomo has distinguished himself internationally as an opera composer, his current music has taken on a different feeling in sound and form in an effort to reach a larger audience.
10 years ago, I would have wanted to write a piece such as a psalm meditation that I'm working on now. I would have only, as a source of sound, I would have only the traditional instrumental sounds. And now I have everything. I have the building blocks of every kind of sound. So that has made it possible for me to try my hand at almost anything I might want to. And for me, you see, almost anything describes what I would want to do. I found it recently to be a real challenge and something I really want to accomplish, to try to study every form, every structure, whether it's a southern two-step dance, plucked banjo rhythm, or a gospel choir.
Rivendell, the DiGiacomo homestead near Casanova, New York, houses 11 adults, 1 college-bound teenager, and 1 young boy, in addition to more than 36 household pets and about 50 more animals in and around the barn. This extended family, through its lifestyle, philosophy, and appreciation of and closeness to nature, is clearly in touch with Frank DiGiacomo's music of life. The inspiration and orchestration of musical passages unfolds before us.
His whole life was music. He loved it. Everything he did was music, opera, always classical music at that time. And Up until he was into high school, it was classic. But then he started to enjoy his rock and roll and so forth. But his most of the time was spent with piano. And he's had so many recitals, concerts, and things, playing all the time for different affairs in the town. And he also played for dance classes that they had there. And then in high school, of course, was when he was the head pianist there for every affair they had.
The first opera I knew was Aida. So the first opera I wrote at 7 took place in the Middle East. It was in Italian. and that's the way it progressed. It wasn't until I was about 14 that I decided that I could try writing in my own language. I've always been drawn to film music for the same reasons that I've been drawn to opera. There are possibilities in opera that seem to me to be not available anywhere. For me, I needed the written word, the written or spoken word, the psychological possibilities, the ability to conceptualize even without the spoken word.
Frank attended Syracuse University to further his musical training, as well as to share his interest for and love of opera. Instead, he found that his musical interests were different from everyone else's.
Didn't have enough of what I felt I needed, which was the opportunity to perform my own works. And no one would even let me write opera for any academic situation. In other words, in composition, I was not allowed to write an opera or anything remotely connected to that. The attitude was, and I understand it, that at my age I had no business even thinking in those terms. Unfortunately, at that time, those were the only terms I could think.
His career was principally at that time in the area of working with disturbed blind children when I first knew him at an institution here locally, and at which he was extremely gifted even there.
In fact, one of the young girls he was teaching at that time soon became part of the family to Frank and his wife Karen. Linda DiGiacomo was adopted by the couple and had been loved, nurtured, and encouraged to develop her own gifts and talents to their fullest.
One of the strongest desires that he has is to communicate with other human beings. I would say that he's taught me more about that, which I feel is invaluable in this life. And he has successfully communicated with those of us in the house that have lived with him a long time, and has a great desire to do that with as many people as possible. With his music, basically. That's how he communicates best, and that, I think, his music speaks for him and for the kind of person he is better than anything else.
He opens up himself and his heart, and he allows everything that he feels, everything that he knows, everything that he thinks or perceives to come through into his music. And that's why it's so great, too, because that's why many people will hear it and they will really understand and feel, not even understand, but instinctively know that there's something incredibly special about it because it touches something in them.
Frank's compositions, childhood through college, included more than a dozen operas and a great many incidental pieces, all written for his own enjoyment. The general public hadn't had the pleasure of hearing any of it until
several students, vocal students, became real interested in my work and would perform pieces from the operas. And I was always really happy with the reaction of the people hearing it. A series of circumstances eventually brought me round to the possibility of having one of my operas actually performed on stage. In the middle 70s, I decided to harken back to the kind of thing I did when I was a kid, to take a fairy tale and set it to music, giving it my own viewpoint. So that's how I landed on Beauty and the Beast. I had more or less, I guess, 3/4 of the way written that opera when a good friend of mine who was working a lot in theater, low community theater, suggested that we try, just a group of friends, try putting the opera on. Beauty and the Beast took 3 years to write and then took 1.5 years to get down on paper. And the opera was put on and was successful. And what's most important to me, I was able to, for the first time, hear something of mine from beginning to end, staged and reasonably, I mean, the singing was excellent, but reasonably well done musically, and had some idea where to go from there. I was commissioned to do a work for children, as Joan Basil, the woman who commissioned the work, said to me, she asked for a 10-minute Christmas opera, and she wound up getting Gerda Demeron. And it's true. I mean, it's an 1.5 hour full-scale opera, and was one of the most successful experiences in my life. The kids who learned, many of them learned the score by rote, sang very difficult music. The orchestra played difficult music. I spent 4 months every day at the school, not only coaching them, but talking with classes somehow related.
In 1977, Mike McKenna, at the age of 13, played the lead in DiGiacomo's Christmas opera for children, Journey to Bethlehem. Now an adult, he's still involved in music for his own enjoyment and as a disc jockey for the enjoyment of others. He remembers.
Well, the first meeting was at the Amala Night Visitors when I was doing that. I think it was the year before. Someone said he was out in the audience and he had an opera for our high school to do. And then I met him backstage, I believe, so long ago, it was 11 years, but he seemed like like somebody, you look up to and like, wow, he wrote an opera. Sometimes it was hard. His music was probably, complicated for me, just learning the melodies and stuff. And with him there playing the piano made it a lot easier, and the way he wanted it done. And, just his encouragement, I think, helped it along. It definitely widened my horizons in music, I was mainly into jazz because my parents had done FM 88 since I was probably, ever since they've been on, I guess, And then I got into opera and singing opera, and just the way opera is done, all the little parts, and it was different, but definitely an experience.
It's opera. And the way, in America especially, as far as I can see, it's not recognized as it should be, the way it seems to be in the European countries.
In terms of the community at large, I think that he could be a very important influence. I think the pieces that we've done so far, or that have been done so far, were very, very well received. And I think he would have a very significant following if the mechanisms existed for his work to be generally known, because a lot of what he's saying is universal and is important to anyone, anywhere on the planet. If you're a human being, he has something to say to you. I think the artistic community is considerably worried about doing things that are too experimental. The financial pressures are beyond belief. And so many of the standard arts organizations in the world many of the major opera houses now have really become museums. They are given over to the task of taking a period piece and reproducing it exquisitely well. Mount something like Beauty and the Beast or the Dybbuk, which is another major piece of his, which is just magnificent, requires a lot of money. And for people to come up with the kinds of money that's necessary, they've got to be really convinced that they're doing something that's going to be very well received. So it's a dangerous business, and it's much better to do another Bohème than it is to tackle a new production of Beauty and the Beast that no one's ever heard of.
Frank penned 2 more full-scale operas, requiring years of writing and scoring, only to find that neither would be produced, the Dybbuk and Trojan Women. In this country, the structure of the artistic hierarchy is political, built on grants. It seems to have little, if anything, to do with art and the presentation of ideas, but rather with the way a grant is written.
The place in which I had worked all along, the area of opera, seemed suddenly to be totally impractical. I could pour my soul into the music, but the main purpose of anything always with me was communication, was sharing, was seeing if the way I thought in terms of sound about a concept, a philosophical question, a situation dramatically, was shared by even one other human being. And there was no possibility for that. Opera had been, for people in general, what the movies seemed to be. People queued up, all kinds of people, to go to see operas. In the same way, people queue up and go to see film. And film does, for the majority of people, the same thing that opera once did in a much more serviceable manner.
Movies have historically been a source of inspiration for the music that Frank DiGiacomo creates. After all, it's the people who are seeing movies, every man, woman, and child with whom he wants to share his music. The movie library at the DiGiacomo homestead, consisting of VCRs and video discs, rivals their music and book library in size and variety. All are very extensive. And movie watching, well, it's as much a regular household activity as food preparation, mealtime, caring for the multitude of animals, entertaining friends, and of course, listening to music. Household members often spend some of their free time in the music library listening, relaxing, and learning to appreciate different kinds of music. A common sight at Rivendell is that of Frank, his son Josh, and friend Tammy sharing and discussing each other's musical preferences.
And I did walk by him today, and came upon her. So I turned her loose, but she was screaming.
This was so unusual at the time of flutes and stuff. You never heard that.
And the foreign student said to me,
Right, a lot of people like it, so right.
There are elephants and lions to Piccadilly Circus.
Have you ever heard the song before? I remember this song well.
Another common sight is that of DiGiacomo in his gym, working out. Because the composer's activities are mostly mental, it's important to him that he exercise regularly. Finely tuned body is essential to an alert mind. Besides, he often does some serious and productive thinking while working out.
As grateful and appreciative as I am about the performances of my own music that have taken place in the past, they never, in cases like full operas, they never were exactly as I wanted them. I never heard them as written, never. I became increasingly interested in popular music, dance music, and my only awareness of synthetic music had been what I had learned in music school, and that was not an accurate picture. I was not hearing violins or an orchestra. I was hearing synthetic sound that sounded like coherent music, and nothing that I was hearing was indicating to me that I couldn't manipulate this sound in a way to suit my own needs. And that would mean that it would be note perfect, and there would just be me and the machine, and then the listeners.
I'd say his music's very unique, especially the stuff he's written on a synthesizer lately. I don't even know if you'd classify it as operatic music. I think there should be a different classification of music now, like a new generation of synthesizer music. There should be a new classification, a new section.
Nice to have him in my house because he's someone you can really, really talk to. I mean, you can let out all your problems to. Any problem you got, he will help you. He can help you. And as well as that ability, he's got musical talent up there. He's got it all flowing through his head. And he could be blind, he could be deaf, he could be anything, but he still's got that music flowing through his head.
Since he has been working on the synthesizer, that very often he will base his music on a text of some sort, and more recently he may base his music on a personal experience also. The music is, on the surface, less tied to, say, a story. And in some ways, although it may seem more inaccessible to a number of people, I feel that really his music is exposing more of himself. That, in fact, what I'm hearing that he's writing now is really coming straight from his gut.
Prior to DiGiacomo's use of a synthesizer and sampler, all music was laboriously handwritten. Now, music can be created more quickly on a broader sound range and stored in computer memory. It can duplicate and convey the exact sound and tonal image intended by the composer. When Frank DiGiacomo creates new music, his idea and concept is whole from beginning to end. About that concept of wholeness, he creates his music in the same manner and with a similar philosophy to the way he and his extended family share their living and growing conditions, as a whole unit, with each family member contributing his or her gifts and talents for the awareness and education of all. This includes the animals.
The reason that we have all the animals that we do in the house has a great deal to do with certain fundamental philosophies that we want to have and do have. And it has to do with taking care of other beings, both really animals and other human beings. It's an example of remembering to care about things that need caring about.
I tend to be a lot easier dealing with people, and I think that's due to the fact that I've grown up around so many different people. Like, when I go out into a public situation, I tend not to be as shy as some people, and I can talk with people a lot more.
One of the benefits is that I'm becoming more mature, and I've got a part of Frank's mother, Karen, my brother, and becoming a part of them is a really big step, because when I'm going to become 15, I'm really going to become 28 in my mind. So, one of the non-benefits is there's only one bathroom in this house, so only one person can use it at a time.
I feel, and I think everyone that lives here feels, that how we relate to each other and every other human being on the earth is why we're here, to learn how to do that the best possible way and to understand each other and to learn to love each other. So we act really like a family together, but we've chosen each other, and we share the same philosophies, the same dreams, the same things are important to us. So it's a tie that binds very tightly.
He's dealing artistically with very profound human issues, and in a manner that is entertaining and that is thought-provoking and moving. And that will put him in the league with the big boys, the Verdi and the Beethoven and the Wagner and the Bach and Mozart, because that's the level we're talking about.
I don't care if people think that I'm a good musician or that I write great music. I just would like people to know that I try to be a good person. As best I know how.